And now, continuing from my last video on Igor Vaganov, the man whom I think did something regarding the JFK assassination, but I'm not sure what. Skipping ahead here to January 18th, 1967. The Philadelphia office of the FBI is sending a note to J. Edgar Hoover about our boy Vaganov. The Greater Philadelphia Magazine of January 1967 contains an article written by Gayton Fonzie entitled Loose Ends, with a subheading, How Many Did the Warren Commission Leave, and Do They Lead Anywhere? The bulk of the article concerns a Delaware County man who was questioned by the FBI on 11/22/63 in Dallas. The questioning was in connection with his possible involvement in the assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The article then continues, indicating that this man, who will here be called Brown, but we can call him Vaganov, could be considered a possible suspect. As a result of this article, D.O. McElwee, Assistant District Supervisor, Pennsylvania Board of Parole, advised Special Agent Walter V. McLaughlin of this office that a parolee under his supervision, Igor Vladimirs Vaganov, contacted him on 1/11/67 and was visibly disturbed and emotionally upset. Vaganov stated that he is the man referred to as Brown and feels that he is being libeled, and is also afraid that it may be disclosed in subsequent articles that he is a parolee. McElwee is also disturbed by the fact that it might lead to this same information. Vaganov is known to the Bureau and is a subject in Bureau file entitled Igor V. Vaganov, a.k.a. Turk, et al., UFAP, Conspiracy to Defraud Insufficient Funds Checks, Office of Origin, San Diego. Vaganov, in March 1966, was tried in the Superior Court in San Diego County, California, for 55 bad checks, which were dated from January 4th to January 15th, 1965, the majority of which were passed by his ex-wife, Martha. He is now remarried, his second wife, Anne, as of November 1965. Now, I don't know why these dates don't match up with the previous dates, but let's not get into that here. The probation report for San Diego County points out that Vaganov has been confined for over 3.5 months as a result of this offense, and recommended that he be put on probation for a period of 6 years and pay restitution in the amount of $1,034. This was agreed to by the court. In April 1966, Vaganov was transferred from the probation office in San Diego to the Pennsylvania Board of Parole, and was to live with his mother, Mrs. Olga Gedvillo, at 2214 Mary Lane, Broomall, Pennsylvania. As of January 1967, his file shows that he is living at 49 Brandon Road, Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, and is employed by the Hajoka Corporation in Pennsylvania. He is under the direct supervision of A.J. Owens, parole agent, is well known to the Upper Darby Township Police Department, and his FBI number is that. His probation will not end until January 19th, 1972. This information is being forwarded to the Bureau together with a copy of the January 1967 issue of the Greater Philadelphia Magazine. The article in question is on page 66. Well, that's interesting. The Pennsylvania Board of Parole and the FBI seem to be genuinely concerned about the welfare of Igor Vaganov, even though this magazine article about him doesn't even use his real name. I think that's commendable. The FBI rarely shows such concern for check bouncers. And this is 9 days later. Igor Vladimirs Vaganov, Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, subject of Philadelphia file Igor V. Vaganov et al., conspiracy to defraud insufficient funds checks, is presently on probation from the state of California for his conviction on passing fraudulent checks. He is presently under the jurisdiction of the Pennsylvania Board of Parole, and information has been given to the Philadelphia office by D.O. McElwee, Assistant District Supervisor, that Vaganov has applied for travel permission to 488 Madison Avenue, New York, New York. The purpose of the trip is to meet John Burnett, Associate Director of Esquire magazine, for interview regarding his life history. He will travel by train and be accompanied by no one. According to McElwee, Vaganov is to be paid $2,500 for his story to Esquire magazine, who will also place a phone in the apartment at the above address. For the information of the New York office, Vaganov was a suspect in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy and was interviewed by FBI agents in connection with the same. So 9 days later, after this newspaper article has upset him, or this magazine article has upset him so, and has the FBI concerned about him, 9 days later, he's going to get an interview in a national magazine, Esquire magazine, and he's going to be paid $2,500 for it. I think that's some extraordinarily quick action there, and the FBI must have put in a good word for him. So our shy and retiring check bouncer, who was so concerned that he might be identified from an article that used a pseudonym to identify him, here, 9 days later, agrees to appear in Esquire magazine, a national publication, and there's a full-page color photo of him, which is quite a feature for a person being interviewed in a magazine who's not famous already. Well, if he wasn't famous already, he's famous now. Apparently $2,500 persuaded him to overcome his shy and retiring inclinations. And I think this is interesting. The guy writing the article for Esquire magazine, John Burnett, actually contacts the FBI. On 2/20/1967, John Burnett, identifying himself as being with the Esquire magazine, called from New York City, inquired as to whether the FBI in Dallas could furnish him with the exact time of the interview of Igor Vaganov on 11/22/63, and that would be a good piece of information to know. Mr. Burnett was advised that such information could not be furnished to him, and no indication was made to him that such information was or was not available. That's typical FBI helpfulness. So it appears here that Mr. Burnett is not an insider with the FBI exactly, yet he does contact the FBI, and I think that's noteworthy. Also noteworthy, I think, is that Domingo Benavides, shortly thereafter, also contacted the FBI. On 2/20/67, Domingo Benavides telephonically contacted the writer and advised that he had been interviewed by the FBI on a prior occasion during the assassination investigation because he was a witness to the Oswald Tippit killing. Benavides said that on or about 2/10/67, he received a long-distance phone call from a man who identified himself as John Burnett, a reporter for Esquire magazine in New York. Burnett stated that he wanted to speak with Benavides about a man called Igor Vaganov. During the conversation, Burnett stated that he wanted to show a photograph of Vaganov to Benavides in an effort to determine if Benavides had seen Vaganov in the area of the Oswald Tippit killing on the date of the assassination. Benavides stated he agreed to view the photograph if and when it was shown to him. Shortly thereafter, Burnett visited Benavides at his place of business, and in his company was Vaganov. Benavides said that he did not identify Vaganov as being in the area of the assassination scene, and so stated to Burnett. Benavides furnished the above information to FBI, indicating that he had a photograph of Vaganov, which had been left with him by Burnett. Benavides stated if the FBI desired the photograph, they could have it at any time they wanted to pick it up. In conclusion, Benavides stated that Vaganov appeared familiar to him for some reason, but he cannot state now where he has seen him in the past. It was Benavides' belief that Burnett was trying to place Vaganov at the scene, possibly as the man in the red Ford, which he, Benavides, had alluded to in his statement to the FBI on the date of the assassination. And note this last sentence, this last part of the sentence. It means that Benavides is saying that he talked to the FBI on the date of the assassination. And this is significant because the first thing we have on the record from Benavides is his Warren Commission testimony. There is no FBI interview. There is no police affidavit. And yet, in this document, Benavides is said to be saying that he talked to the FBI on the day of the assassination. I think that's very significant because I think it shows that there's a relationship here between Benavides and the FBI, which dates at least to the day of the assassination, if not earlier. But the earliest reference we have to Benavides in FBI documents comes from 6 days after the assassination, and they're not even talking to him directly. They're getting information through the Dallas police, and they even misspell Domingo somehow. And that's Agent Vincent Drain, who seems to be an insider among the Dallas agents regarding at least his dealing with Seth Cantor, as I've covered in another video. And Benavides is another one of these witnesses I deem to be potentially vulnerable to manipulation by the authorities, possibly because of his not honorable discharge from the U.S. Navy. He was in the U.S. Navy, as was Vaganov, by the way, and he did not get an honorable discharge, as Mr. Bellin seems to be surprised to hear. And as we may be surprised to hear, Mr. Bellin didn't ask him why he had a dishonorable discharge. Benavides may have cooperated with the FBI, but he didn't cooperate with Mark Lane. This is from Mark Lane's Playboy interview. Still another witness to the Tippit slaying, who also, you will recall, said Tippit's murderer was short and stocky, was Domingo Benavides. When I visited Dallas with a film crew some months ago, Benavides agreed to speak to us, but the night before the projected interview, 2 Dallas homicide detectives visited D'Antonio, our director, in the Tower Motel, and informed him that there would be no interview and that we were being investigated. Benavides never showed up for the appointment. So he's happy to talk with the FBI, and maybe he doesn't want to talk to Mark Lane, but it looks like instead of talking to Mark Lane, he called either the FBI or the Dallas police, and then the Dallas police applied some intimidation to D'Antonio, who was working with Mark Lane. This story is also recounted in Ramparts magazine. Mark Lane located Domingo Benavides, a witness to the shooting, and arranged to meet him at Lane's motel for a filmed interview the next morning. Lane offered him $100. That night, 2 men from the homicide squad came to the motel and inquired of Lane's film crew why they were so interested in Benavides. "What did you offer our boy $100 for?" they asked. According to the film crew, the policeman knew the exact time of Benavides' appointment with Lane, implied Benavides would not be there, and generally showed a great deal more concern about their footage on the Tippit murder than about the killing of Kennedy. Benavides never showed up. But Benavides was allowed to appear on the CBS special on the Warren Report in 1967. And I think, as I've said before, the CBS show was putting on friendly witnesses to the official story, cooperative witnesses. So I think what this all indicates is that Benavides was a very cooperative witness, cooperative with the authorities, but not with people who want to investigate what happened. So I think we have 2 similar conspiracy tools here. Both of them were friendly with the FBI, and the FBI was friendly with both of them. They seem to have a special relationship with the FBI, and both of them were very reluctant to talk to independent investigators. But both of them apparently were happy, tickled pink, to appear in national media, national mainstream media. And probably the national mainstream media is also friendly with the FBI. So I think we're having a controlled story being presented here of Benavides and of Vaganov, and I don't think we should allow ourselves to be influenced by the official story presentation of these 2 folks. And both of them served in the U.S. Navy, which is maybe why they recognize each other.